Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show. Now, we are joined by Neil, 10th Man. Have we got Arwin yet? No, hasn't disturbed my intro. Brian's Logic, Father of a Stolen Child, and the Adam Meakin, together with a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hello, hello.
Hello, how are things?
Hey, good morning.
Afternoon, everyone.
Stay the day.
Things are fab. Things are doing great. Let's do some housekeeping.
Good.
Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon that's formerly known as Earth curve?
No. There is no geometric horizon.
There's
In
no
reality.
Earth curve.
No. If
Right,
it was,
that's
I
it.
would have found it after
Thanks
6
for
years.
tuning in. Thanks for coming. That's the end of the discussion.
If there was, Bri, it would be constrained, wouldn't it, by its geometry, and therefore would be in a almost identical position every day.
Yeah, exactly. If it was geometric, then it would have to adhere to the geometry of the globe Earth.
So you're saying it would have limitations?
Yeah, like 1 foot from a 1 foot observation height, for instance, it could only be 1.22 miles away from you. But we know that it's a lot more than that often from a 1 foot observation height. So,
Brian,
Well, Brian, how many horizons do we have?
only have the one that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I agree.
what Brian and 10th are doing is they're dumbing down the Black Swan to the point where it's being described as a hill. So Earth curve, physical Earth curve obstruction, the geometric horizon, is a hill that gets in the way, and it would have those physical geometric limitations all day, every day, if we lived on a sphere. It wouldn't move with the weather, because it would be a hill in the way of things. It just isn't. The horizon's not Earth curve. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No, because if there was, we would see drift when any object is left the surface of the Earth.
There used to be until airplanes were invented, and then they stopped being.
So it just magically went away.
Yeah, well, I mean, before airplanes were invented, the sun and the moon and the stars all went across us. Now, they failed to tell everyone that they move at 3 different rates. That's besides the point. But they invented airplanes then, thanks to the Wright brothers, and they found out no, there was absolutely no evidence of it.
So if the sun, moon, and stars are moving at 3 different rates, then that means the sun, moon, and stars are moving at 3 different rates, not the Earth.
That's exactly it. 3 different rates.
Well, everything's in motion.
I'm not in
Except
motion right now.
Hold on, I got to play baller for a minute. Everything's in motion.
Oh, okay.
Except for us. The Earth is not in motion.
Just like pizza dough.
Well,
But
that's why we
Go on, Father of a Stolen Child. Everyone wants to get a piece of this. Go ahead.
well, that's what gyros measure rigidity in space. So they measure our movement.
And where's this gyro
That didn't
position
sound
down?
very
Do
confident.
the gyros match the celestial star rotations?
No, they match our movement, the sun's movement.
Hold on, I'm confused. You've just told me they're fixed in space. which is what I understood gyros to do. They spin. If you've got a wheel of a bicycle and you put it on the end of your finger and spin it, yeah, you can tilt your hand in any direction and the wheel will essentially stay the same way. Yeah, that's gyroscopic motion. So in other words, it's fixed in space, as you called it. How did you term it? Rigid in space or something like that?
Yeah.
Right. That's what gyros do. They stay fixed in their spinning reference. That's what they do. So now you're saying, well, go on.
I'm saying, can I clarify? It seems to me the claim is that the gyro would be subjective, would kind of demonstrate, because of its rigidity in space, you're saying it would demonstrate the path of the Earth rotating on its axis, but it wouldn't be affected. Its rigidity in space wouldn't be affected by the path around the sun, path of the solar system around the galactic center, etc., etc. Those movements in free space would not be accounted for, but the rotation of the Earth on the gyro would.
Well, those movements are, in comparison, so angularly small they wouldn't be perceptible.
15 degrees an hour
over a long period of time.
No, 15 degrees an hour is what they claim. So the claim is, now I'm not saying this happens, but the claim is that a gyro, which is rigid in space, will drift in its cage to the tune of 15 degrees an hour as it is claimed Earth rotates beneath the fixed frame of the spinning gyro. That's the claim. 15 degrees an hour drift. So in other words, what you're watching is a Coriolis deviation. You're attached to the claim to be spinning reference frame of Earth, and the gyro's in fixed space. So when you see it appear to move, the gyro's not moving, it's you seeing apparent deflection at 15 degrees an hour because you're turning underneath the rigid frame of reference of the spinning gyro. That is their claim.
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So given their claim is you will observe drift in the gyro because it's rigid in space and you turn beneath it along with the cage it's attached to, you are claimed to see, or it is supposed to be apparent, that there's a 15 degrees drift if Earth's turning beneath the gyro as claimed. But that means Earth would be turning under anything else that isn't attached to the non-inertial turning claimed to be reference frame of a spinning Earth. Now, if that is the case, as they claim, then flight times would be reduced when travelling west, because Earth would be turning beneath them for us to observe this effect, claimed by the gyro. And we do not observe shortened flight times travelling west because Earth's turning beneath aeroplanes. Quite the contrary. Often, they're short of going the other way.
Well, that's the conservation of angular momentum, making them seem to not drift.
What's that measured in?
Radians.
Black Swan. Kudos to you, by the way, John. I love that, mate. Have you heard this, Adam? Were you here yesterday when John dropped that on us?
No, I think I nicked off, but
I'll give a brief summary, then I'll let him pad it out. So I'm looking for a way to take straight from Coriolis to Black Swan, and John did it with an extra step. So you offer up a discussion like we just have about the drift in a gyro at 15 degrees an hour as it's claimed Earth turns beneath it. And then the response to that is that's conservation of angular momentum, right?
yeah.
Well, I'll leave John to take it from there. I've just exercised his debunking of the
I'm accepting the conservation of angular momentum, yeah?
at this stage, yeah. Go ahead, John.
Yeah.
Do you want to pad out the rest?
Well, conservation of angular momentum is measured in radians. You need a radial value for that.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Black Swan.
Well, yeah, you can calculate the angular momentum, but you can't apply it to any practicality. It's just, it has no units, does it? So you require R to
I think
change that angle.
exactly, to make that rebuttal, you require R.
Yeah. Very good, sir.
Very good. I love it too. Black Swan, man. It's like the Swiss Army knife of globe debunkings, isn't it? saw down a tree with it and then open a can
That's
with
a
it.
good analogy.
I like the batting off of the gyro as well. They're too small, those angular changes. So nobody ever even bothered to demonstrate them. They're just...
Yeah, the changes at 15 degrees an hour are the thing that's supposed to be claimed to prove that we spin, though.
I would, if I'd have kept going with it, I'd have said celestial precession would have proven that.
That's also Coriolis effect in their world. These are all Coriolis claims, John. Let's just keep it. I don't want to keep saying father of a stolen child. They're all Coriolis claims, right? You turning beneath the celestial objects to observe them appear to move, not because they're moving, but because you're turning beneath them. Well, that's Coriolis effect again.
Yep.
The stars are one of their better examples of a Coriolis. At least
They
they're
were
consistent. Yeah, but as I was mentioning, until the invention of aeroplanes, things that could propel themselves, that was a good example. But I don't think ballers place the star movement as a Coriolis effect. But
no, the reason they don't, in my personal opinion, is because that so thoroughly anchors them to the 15 degrees an hour drift. So while it's there in the background, they don't often assert it, because then there's no moving over to the conservation of angular momentum. Because conservation of angular momentum is a rebuttal to the reason we're not seeing any drift in aeroplanes or in gyros. We don't see it in gyros either. It's only claimed to happen on a fog gyro. Nevertheless, the reason we don't see it in drones and hot air balloons and blimps and helicopters and aeroplanes and anything else that's not attached, as we should, they then move on to conservation of angular momentum. Whereas how do you move from the stars movement with a Coriolis deflection at 15 degrees an hour to, well, they're not deflecting at all because we're conserving the momentum of the stars? They can't shoehorn that argument in with the stars, so they don't have to make that argument.
So when the sun is setting, Earth is the reason that it looks like it's setting, because the Earth is spinning under the sun, according to the ballers. But it doesn't work with the planes.
Got you presented, Paul, but there's nothing. Oh, there we go. It's a mechanical gyro sat on a compass.
whose is that? Whose is that?
That's John's, isn't it?
No.
Yeah, that's what's Rob Durham's.
Rob
It's
Durham's,
Rob
isn't
Durham's.
it? It's not John. It's not Savage's.
Rob
That's
Durham.
Rob Durham's. He's
Yeah, it's the bit of plasticine counterweight on Rob's.
yeah.
Thought I recognised it. I've played with that one at the conference.
By comparison to Foucault, who had access to these sorts of things, what Foucault did with his gyro was hand cranked the thing up to about 500 RPM, maybe a bit higher, and it would decay in a matter of minutes, a couple of minutes, and then that would be all he got. And he had to extrapolate out this claimed deviation at 15 degrees an hour on mechanically what is compared to this. Now, I'm not saying I don't care about the marketing of this. They probably market it as a toy, but I don't care. The precision engineering in this particular gyro, by comparison to what Foucault had, is orders of magnitude better. Just there's no comparison.
Can I say something there, Nathan?
Go ahead.
Something I forgot about. I just put the pieces together there now, because I learned what you just talked about there with Foucault's pendulum. I learned that, and I learned what I'm going to say now at a completely different time. I put a lot of learning into the gyro compass years ago, back 2017, I'd say it was 16, 17, and I listened to a captain of a ship, and he stated the only reason that the mechanical gyro within the gyro compass or any mechanical gyro will ever drift is because it doesn't have the correct RPMs. Now, Foucault's pendulum wouldn't have had the correct RPMs because he's losing RPMs from the minute he lets it go, because it's not going to continue to hold at 500 RPMs or whatever. So there's a particular RPMs that it has to go up there, and if you start trying to use it before it has the correct RPMs, if you start trying to use the gyro compass before the gyroscope has the correct RPMs, it will cause it to drift. So Foucault was just working off of a gyroscope that didn't have the correct RPMs. And that's why it started drifting. So that's all it was. It was just a mistake. Kind of like Al Biruni with his astrolabe. He didn't use it correctly.
Cool. You happy to keep this up, Paul? You might not be able to come off mute without.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'll keep it as long as I can. And one thing too, he actually shows. I started a little bit into the video, but he shows even just any bit of slight movement, that gyro starts to process. I guess I could try to rewind and show it. Let's see.
While you're doing that, this is running at a couple of thousand RPM, I believe. Is that right? It's been a long while since I watched this.
Yeah, and I think he even does it later where he probably everybody's starting to scream. I can't be quiet at all. But yeah, I think he even balances it and puts a motor on it so it can run longer in such a way where the motor will run even longer than just spinning it up initially. So okay, I'm gonna have to mute myself.
Okay. You can bash it back up to about 4.5 minutes, just so it was where we were before. That'd be great. Thanks. Perfect.
Another thing about the gyroscope, I think Paul's on mute now, so another thing about the gyroscope is that it'll precess in the direction, and this is what the captain said as well, it will precess in the direction that the motor is turning it. So if it's precessing, let's just say east to west or west to east, that's only because the motor is turning it in that direction. It'll precess in that direction. So I mean, the claims concerning it, we all know it's nonsense anyway, but I'm just saying the claims concerning it are really, really flawed.
Or if it's pushed beyond the cage parameters. So I'm sure that 2 or 3 years ago we were talking about pendulous vanes and the corrections they needed to be made for. And after investigation, it turns out that they're really only correcting after hard banks and things like that.
Yeah, they're just a damper system. That's what pendulous vanes are, just damper system.
Cool. But the bottom line is, they claim this gyro should drift. That's their claim, 15 degrees an hour. It's not budging a smegging inch. Yeah, and I've seen this done by loads of different people. Varying gyros. The only exception to it is the fibre optic gyro, which is claimed to drift at 15 degrees an hour.
Yeah, you know those ring laser and fiber optic gyros? I don't know what the full claim is with them, because we're only getting claims from ballers about them. And obviously Bob Nodell, it mostly goes back to Bob Nodell. But if you have one of those in an airplane that's on the ground, because they have to spin that up, that has to be spun up at least half an hour before the plane is ever going to do anything. So how could they fly with a gyro that's precessing all over the place, 15 degrees an hour? How could they trust that gyro? And how could they take off with a gyro that's precessing at 15 degrees an hour? Because they'd have to know that before they fly.
The other interesting thing with that, with the fogs, whatever, all these opticals, is as the claim that appears to be being made from the ring laser gyro data, was that there appears to also be a difference in the rate of drift with altitude. So if you can imagine then the calculations that must be required for these ring laser gyros to actually be of any practical use, and how is that practical use comparable to your mechanical gyro that stays still during all this?
Exactly. Like, I mean, why would you use a ring laser or a fiber optic gyro if they were going to precess on you? You know, if they're going to be messing around on you. If you're flying an airplane.
If I'm flying at 50,000 feet, then the rate of precession is different to 30,000 feet, 25,000 feet. So all of that is, supposedly in this device that they're using, but in the optical, it's changing, whereas in the mechanical, it's not. Yeah. So how do they then have to accommodate for that data to be realized and useful? Do you see what I mean? You've got to have all the knowledge of the data. If it is rotating at a slightly different speed at different altitudes, then you've got to have all that level of data being processed for the optical gyro to yield anything practical, and remember they're an upgrade from the mechanical, but the mechanical never demonstrated this. The two aren't comparable. That's Rob's other setup there, isn't it? That's with the full spin and the counterweight, isn't it? Sat on it. You've got the counterweight there and then the motor, so it just drives constantly. It's kept at the 6 revs.
Yeah, so the only reason that you'd have the drift that you're describing needing to be mathematically accounted for to provide any use to the gyro, which is supposed to remain in a fixed plane of reference. Well, if it's not doing that and you're having to account for that, like you say, it suddenly stops seeming to be useful, especially as its predecessor didn't do that. But then it begs the question, why would it be doing that? If they're saying it's claimed the fibre optic gyro drifts at 15 degrees an hour because Earth's turning beneath it. That's what they're claiming. That's what the globers attribute to that drift in the fibre optic gyro only. Well, if Earth's turning beneath the plane with a fibre optic gyro, then the drift you're experiencing is because Earth's turning beneath your plane, and that would shorten your flight time when travelling west.
I mean, this kind of thing would be noticed by the airlines. I mean, you have to spend a half an hour spinning, like, to get the ring laser or fibre optic gyro up to speed. It takes a half an hour before you're actually, doing anything. You have to spend a half an hour for that to be ready to be used. Now, when a plane is wanting to take off and there's other planes coming in and going out and there's a delay, I've been on planes where I could be sitting there an extra half an hour or more, 45 minutes before the plane leaves the runway, and it leaves the runway late, let's just say. So surely it would have been noticed if their ring laser or fibre optic gyro, whichever one they're using in it, surely it would have been noticed while that plane is sitting on the ground that ring laser or fibre optic gyro is precessing around all over the place. Why would you take off with a gyro that's precessing? How is that going to... I mean, the whole point of it is it's supposed to hold rigid, isn't it? Regardless of what type it is.
Yeah, it defeats the purpose. The useful aspect of a gyro that's being used in aviation is the fact that it remains rigid. The fact that it doesn't drift. Now, if the cage is drifting around it at 15 degrees an hour, it renders it useless. So that claim is just nonsense. And it would shorten flight times, if it was. Because according to their claim, if it's doing it because Earth's turning beneath the gyro to force the cage to move at 15 degrees an hour around the fixed frame of the gyro. Well, that means Earth's turning beneath the plane. So it takes off, and you've got LA coming towards you if you're travelling to it from Charlotte. Is that you, Paul? Go ahead, Paul. Oh, okay. So yeah, if you're travelling towards LA from Charlotte, west, and your gyro's drifting at 15 degrees an hour, as it's claimed to, because Earth's turning beneath it, then you're going to get to LA a lot quicker, about an hour and a half, in fact, rather than 4.5 hours. But that doesn't happen. So it's a complete nonsense claim.
Yeah, it's complete and utter, total and utter nonsense.
Move on. I mean, any evidence that... Go on,
Sorry, Paul.
I was going to take us sideways a little bit, but you were talking yesterday, I think, or the day before, about John Dee and science and scientific method. And I remember you coming on Iron Realm to discuss a similar thing, to point out that this is not science, what we're seeing here. And I think, myself included, in the early days, we were thinking we were bringing scientific evidence to the table here, and I remember you raising an objection to that point with Savage, Nathan, and you know, this is really, really good stuff. It's a fantastic demonstration. It's not science. Let's not call it science. And again, got John swallowed, but he took it graciously in the end. And it's that realization, actually, that science, when we say something has science behind it, it's a lot more than what we're seeing here, which is a demonstration. in terms of the validity.
Yeah, that was the one bit that QE didn't tell me. He told me after. He educated me in terms of what the scientific method was and gave me a really good grasp of what it does and doesn't have to entail in order to call it science. And after a good understanding was established on my part, he then turned around and said, "You do realise this is a double-edged sword?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, why? Sounds great to me." And he's like, "No, because you'll find that a lot of people on your own side will use this word also. They'll say science. And if your drum's going to be heard loud and clear, then you've got to beat that drum to people like that." And I was like, "Oh, that's no bother." And what went through my mind is, I don't know, Anthony Riley or someone like that saying science when it's not appropriate. And me saying, "Hey, no, you're quite wrong there." So who's the first person that this comes up with? Well, a PhD in spectroscopy, of course. Somebody far, far better educated than I. And he knows it, and I know it. I'm not embarrassed to say it. But I still had to call him up on it, and it was, I can assure you, one of the most difficult things I've done in my time during Flat Earth.
You rang me and said, "Should I just push on?" I said, "Yeah," because you were like, how hard should I go at this? How persistent should I be? And I was not far behind. I was still a flat earther, but I was still accepting that bitter pill that some of the stuff that I'd held as science wasn't. And I think I remember saying, "Yeah, you've got to do it because you are scientists, and as soon as you twig and you realise how you've been mugged off, you accept it straight away. If you've got no other eggs in the basket, if you know what I mean. If you've got no other reason, like the shape of the Earth, to maintain that position. If you're being honest with yourself, actually, proper scientists that have gone through with degrees, etc." It is a bitter pill to swallow, but you do swallow it because you have to deny it. Otherwise, it's just a point of acceptance. But yeah, I remember. How long ago was that? Was it 3, 4?
A long time.
Yeah.
I bet John D hates the fact that is my example of this. I bet he hates it.
I
was just going to ask if John D came to that realization, what he thinks about today. Does he cringe?
Can't speak for you. No,
I was going to say, I refer, because John, QE, I knew Nate really, but it was QE that really I sat and chewed on it properly. And I give him kudos for slapping me out of that. I say it, and I don't think Dr. John would be any different. You're thanking someone for shaking you out of the veil, shaking it off, and I don't think anybody who's genuine and a truther would see any embarrassment in coming to realise the truth. We're all
right.
mugged off.
Oh, right. Is that why pretty much every single time that happens, it ends badly for me in almost every respect? That Dr. John D is an exception to the rule, right? He's a very humble and private man. Now, I had to do the same exact thing when Netflix came out with their Behind the Curve documentary that essentially asserted that Bob had proved there was a 15 degrees an hour drift as Earth turned under his gyro. And I went and said the same thing to Bob. This isn't science. Now, that has ended in almost all contact between me and Bob being severed. I don't know how neutral the terms are because I don't keep in touch with him. But ultimately speaking, that was devastating to me, my channel, my reputation. Nobody wanted to hear that.
I did qualify it with the type of person.
Somebody said it in chat yesterday. Thanks, Bob. So, you're still hearing the effects of that nonsense.
Well, you turned that round, Nathan, actually, for that.
Yes, I understand that, but there's still fundies that say that's still. Thanks, Bob.
Dude, those are people like Ed.
Yeah, but
They
that
will
works.
always say the dumbest things imaginable.
But that works to our benefit when they say that.
Yeah, there was a guy, his name is John Wayne in the chat. He was really annoying me yesterday.
Did you hear what I said, Neil? That works to our benefit when they say.
Yeah, no, I know it does. I know it does.
No, it was a gift. It was a gift because now we'll say, well, he was wrong too, just like you are, because if that's the case, then Earth would be turning underneath everything, and it doesn't.
Well,
Thanks, Dan.
I started paying attention to this channel because of what happened on Globebusters.
Oh, is that so? No way.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
you're in the minority. A lot of people just buggered off and unsubscribed and said, how dare you.
Well, where I was a baller, you know, I was laughing at Bob at the time. And then to hear another flat earther, in my mind, pointing out where he was wrong, it was just interesting, you know? Like, I thought you guys were a cult.
No way, this gets better and better. You're telling me that somebody from the Globe side came to the channel off the back of that, and you're now a flat earther. I mean, I'm very humbled by that as a journey to this channel. That's amazing.
I'd like to correct John on his last statement, if I may. The ballers have the occult pendulum, not the flat earthers.
The cult, not faux cult.
I said occult pendulum. It's a pun.
I know it's a pun.
Well, then laugh.
There you go.
More funny to pretend I didn't get the pun and correct it.
Well, you got too serious with the pun. That's the problem. Okay, but back to what you were saying on a serious note. Anytime anybody, and Nathan did it with Bob on the scientific method, and anytime you use the word science, you've got to be careful. But anytime anybody tries to help another human being with a much clearer picture of a conversation or an event, heads are going to butt because of egos. And so most people won't do what you did, Nathan. And it was Globebusters at the initial, which I watched a few things, that brought me to your channel. And then right about that time, this thing happened with Bob. And I'm saying, oh, this should be interesting. And it was awesome for me because it was Bob saying the UK and these English guys have this show and they really debate strong and hard. And I said, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. So not just John, but myself. But then afterwards, if Bob's not going to stay the course and be honest when rebuked properly and in love, well, then forget it then. I mean, you can do only so much.
I'd love to hear that show again.
Let's not open old wounds too much. Like I say, it didn't go
the
so well
reason
for
I
me.
raised that, Nate, was not to open on wood, but to tell how actually we do debate, and if you get to the truth, then actually for all of that, again, ultimately, it strengthens our hand. Because if they want to cling on to that ballers and cite Bob sarcastically for it, fine, have it. Take your 15 degrees per hour rotation, and we'll deal with that then. Like I said, and we take it. So ultimately, it's a bit of pain we all went through, a bit like having to accept what is science and what isn't. But we, at the end of it, we come out stronger. We come out able to smash their arguments better.
Well,
Some people do.
Well, some people
Others
do, yes,
never
correct,
learn.
because the assertion overlaps with a claim of ether for the guys at Globebusters, and more power to them. But it means that the way it works to our advantage, or the way that 10th Man was just trying to explain to Neil that it works to our advantage, is that it cements their claim. So they're claiming Earth turns underneath at 15 degrees an hour. Here's it demonstrated in a gyro. That is their claim. Now, bearing in mind that in the debate arena, they will move away from their claim as soon as we point out it doesn't happen. So we give an example of that not happening, and then they'll argue for conservation of angular momentum. No drift, a lack of drift, not seeing the drift, but with an assumption Earth's turning and atmosphere's turning with it. So, in other words, they beg the question of the turning Earth, but don't actually have the drift to prove it anymore, and they'll argue for that. Now, the advantage comes when they say, well, Bob's proved 15 degrees an hour drift, because that cements them to that claim. And then you can point out where it doesn't occur, and they can't move across to, well, we wouldn't see drift because, when they've already claimed Bob's proving drift at 15 degrees an hour as Earth turns under a gyro. So it's useful for us. The problem comes for Globebusters that they want to reassign the assumed cause of this non-experiment, which I also pointed out to them, it's not science, as ether drift. Well, if you're going to reassign the cause to something else, it's no longer working to our advantage, because you're just making up a new claim in terms of what's causing this man-made device to have a claimed drift at 15 degrees. Well, if it's got a claimed drift at 15 degrees, and in the debate arena all they do is deny the drift when we point out it doesn't happen, we need something to cement them to it. And that gyro is it. It could be anything. It could be the pendulum for all I care. I don't care. In fact, when I made the example to Globebusters, I didn't use the gyro for that very reason. On Quantum Eraser's advice, it's like, don't use the gyro. It's too personal to them. Use the pendulum. It's the same principle, but it's not a device they're attached to in any emotional way or invested in any financial way. So when you point out that the drift, same drift, 15 degrees an hour as Earth turns under a pendulum, as opposed to a gyro, it's the same thing. It's swinging back and forth in a fixed frame of reference, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, but seems to knock over the dominoes, right? Well, it's not actually drifting around and around to knock the dominoes over your claim to turn underneath it. That's Earth turning underneath the pendulum. Well, that cements them to that claim. Then you can debunk it with a flight or a blimp or a hot air balloon or a drone or anything else that isn't doing that. But not if you're going to say, well, actually, no, my fog gyro's got nothing to do with that. It's actually because of ether. What the hell's that? Drifting? Really? Okay. That's useless to us to debunk their claims of Coriolis then. So that's where, as I say, us on, if you like, Ballbusters or Flat Earth Debate have drifted apart, no pun intended, from Globebusters, because they want to use it to their advantage in terms of claiming ether drift as opposed to debunking Coriolis. So there's a discontinuity there that doesn't jive in terms of moving forward with the argument about Coriolis, which is how the gyro started and how Bob even phrased it to Netflix. So he's put it out there in those terms. If we see 15 degrees an hour drift, it's because Earth's turning beneath the gyro. And of course we won't see that. And then of course they spin it into him telling somebody around a campfire or whatever, oh no, bad news, we've seen a drift. Well, he's already made the claim that that cause is Earth turning beneath it. It's like, well, unfortunately you have to stick to that if you want to then debunk it with flight times or drones or anything else that's not drifting. But just changing the cause, well, who's that helping? Nobody. But there we go. That's the long and short of the Globebusters slash.
Before we move on from there, we had that pun session in the middle, and Alwyn's wrote the best one I've seen. It's the faux, F-A-U-X, cult pendulum. Very good, Alwyn. I like that.
Wasn't that 10th Man?
No, that's me.
No.
And it's an old one because I came up with that like over 2 years ago.
I got I wish Tony was here. My in-laws, Nathan, are Scousers from my sister's side. And I remember about 10 years ago, being on the phone saying to us, all right, we got a new sofa. It's that fox leather. I was actually quite chuffed about it.
Excellent. We've spent about half an hour solid on Coriolis drift. Is it worth going through the rest of the housekeeping questions for the last third of the show?
I think Brian has something, right?
No, he's doing that in the after show.
Oh, he's doing that for sure.
Yep.
Could I kill gravity with the black swan too?
Yeah, any scientific evidence of gravity.
Well, you'd need a center of mass to assert gravity, so that's going to require radius too.
What? No, you don't. You just
you
need
do.
a bit of space-time bending.
Yeah.
Radius is
If you're going to work out average density, you need an R.
Yeah. How much space-time is going to be bent by the mass of the Earth? That's going to need an R
about
value.
3%.
About 3%. Vic Reeves. 64.2% of all statistics are made up on the spot.
I came up with that 3% 2 years ago, Arwen.
So, scientific evidence of gravity, yeah, both Newtonian and Einsteinian. You need R. You're going to need R if you're going to be asserting sphere Earth and the mass thereof.
Do you need R for Einsteinian?
If you're making any claims about what the Earth does, you do, yeah.
That's kind of stating, though, that it's just... Yeah, but Einsteinian just states that a mass It doesn't have to be spherical.
That's what I just said. So long as you're specifically referencing the mass of Earth, then yeah, you're going to need an R value if you're doing anything in Einsteinian mathematics. I realise it's far more expansive than that. It's dealing with the entire cosmos.
But I think it's any. I think with that, I know I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's like it doesn't matter it's like mass in general just bends spacetime, and that causes the effect. The uneven distribution of mass causes the bending of spacetime. The effect of the bending of spacetime, and that's the effect known as gravity. Supposedly, I don't know if the amount of mass matters to whether because it's just an effect. I don't know. I have to do a little bit thinking about that one. But for the other one, definitely need an R.
Okay, my understanding was it was the uneven distribution of the mass that causes the space-time to bend. And that bending of space-time is what they now call gravity, and you're describing that correctly so as an effect.
Yeah, but I don't know if... no, I'm saying the same thing as you, but I don't know if it matters what... Like, I mean, the moon bending space-time in the heliocentric model and the Earth bending space-time, it doesn't really matter. They're both bending space-time.
Yeah, but you'd only calculate them. You'd only calculate it one at a time, though.
Yeah,
How do you bend? How do you bend the concept?
You don't. We're working within the parameters of reified pseudo-Riemannian force space. None of this is real. Let's just clarify that. Good point. Because we're getting a bit deep into it.
You only need 3% of the mass of the Earth in order to gain enough space-time bending momentum for the entire mass to gather.
Nurse, he hasn't taken his pills again.
No, I did.
I think it's represented in Einsteinian as K curvature. I'll have to double check though.
Did we get that 3% from mathematics, Arwen, or experiment?
From maths. 10th, do you want to make that point again?
I think I said, if I can remember, how do you bend a concept?
You don't. This is all nonsense. This is all reified nonsense. None of this is actually an effect in physical reality. Only effects in pseudo-Riemannian force space geometry, mathematics, not in reality.
It's very easy to bend a concept. You imagine it.
What are you talking about, Nathan? We're a projection of the 4D world.
No, we're not.
Well, in that concept, how much mass is needed to bend space-time? I mean, is there a certain amount of mass that's not big enough to bend it?
Yes, you need over 3% of the mass of the eventual gathering at the end of the line.
Ask him serious questions. Right, you're asking me how much mass can bend space-time. Okay, let's start at the beginning. What is space-time? Show it me, please.
It's a mathematical concept.
So it's not real. So not real, you can't show it me in physicality.
No, I can only describe it.
So you can describe something, and you're asking me how much will the description of this thing bend? This thing that doesn't exist in reality. So when 10th says this is meaningless, he's right.
I don't know. They say it's a fabric. Fabric is a substance.
Nathan, apply some fabric softener, Nathan.
Hold on. That was the most
nitpicking.
Hold on, that was the most.
Just appreciate the weave. Appreciate the fabric for what it is. Maybe sleep on it. You know, you can pull space-time over your mattress and sleep on it.
Okay, right. That is the most literal reification you can have. The description of space-time as a fabric, i.e. the bending of the fabric of space-time, might be the vernacular used when describing the mathematics of pseudo-Riemannian force space. However, there is no literal fabric. But to describe it as Neil initially did, and then Arwen's then rolled with that a little bit further and started making beds with it, which is perfectly within the same level of farce, which is why it's epic. It's not real. None of this is real. You've reified it into an actual fabric, like they do when they show it kids. And they stretch out a piece of fabric and roll balls around on it.
Yeah,
I can prove wormholes with it too, because just take a mattress, right? Imagine that mattress cover is space-time. Well, if you pull one end of the mattress towards the other, you got a wormhole. But it takes a lot of energy to actually do that with a mattress. So, see?
Hey, actually,
Well,
there's
go on, Paul.
there's actually I just dropped in a master B. I had to get off my computer, so I'm on my phone, so I can't really share it. But there's a video I just dropped in master B, and I actually had a Glober agree with me on this one, that the actual cause of gravity is time, and that's what their argument is in this video.
Oh, cool. Can you show me that? Show me that. Show me time.
Oh, I know. Trust me, I know. But it's basically the so-called like time is moving slower at my slower at my feet than at the top of my head, and because of that time dilation, that's the cause of gravity. Just watch the video. It's a Master B.
Yeah,
what
that's
causes the time dilation?
Yeah. Go on, Adam. You're obviously going to go the same place I am.
I think this is their circular loop, isn't it? Again, so that's fine. They explain that the reason is that, but what is causing time to go slower at your feet? I think
It's
mass.
further away from the
Mass.
where the space-time bending is the most concentrated, which should be at the center of mass.
So it's not causative again, is it? It's
time moves fastest closer to the mass. It moves at its most fast. No. Well, I have a pair of pants that I made.
Wait. I'm sorry, Brian. Hang on a second though. That's in the paradigm. That's not true.
That's the other way around.
Slower. Yeah, time moves slower at your feet than it does at the top of your head.
Sorry, you're right. Time slower at your feet. Yeah, slower. Yeah. Sorry,
right, that's why you get stuck when you fall into a black hole for all eternity.
I think
nothing. Correct.
I think nothing seems right here. All of you are on the wrong thread.
Well,
you just need to sleep on it some more, Tim.
Oh, did you see Matthew McConaughey go through that black hole? It was amazing.
Well, can we just validate
but it was not actually a black hole. It was almost a black hole. It was singular. It was enough critical mass, literally, in order for space-time bending to happen up to a certain stable level, so that some kind of interdimensional, timeless space-time being, future human spirit, could use it as a construction template for lesser beings.
What a load of bollocks.
Good movie.
You think that's bad? Wait to hear what I have to say. I have a pants that I've made out of the fabric of space-time. So mathematically, I will be wearing pants later.
Dire. Absolutely dire.
Your pants argument is so bad you don't have a leg to stand on.
Oh, come on, Virus leaves his pants.
If you have some doubt about space-time, just sleep on it. Literally.
You're thinking of a memory foam mattress, Arwen. Come on.
Right, speaking of space and time, any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
A mattress. They sleep on it every night.
Single viable hypothesis.
Any
please.
word from Becky?
No, there's none. There's none. None possible.
Hey, if you know somebody that doesn't sleep on a mattress in astronomy, astrophysics, all that, I'd like to know. I think every one of them sleeps on a mattress.
No, but what about that Becky lady? She never got back to anybody? She never answered your tent at all?
No, been going on 2 years.
Why is my viable hypothesis being ignored?
Mattresses isn't a viable hypothesis, Arwin. Just give it up.
But it's the proof for the bending of space-time.
Anybody?
Yeah,
from
but
Discord?
unlike gas, mattresses have springs.
Let's broaden it a little bit just for Discord. Any science whatsoever that's claimed to prove a sphere? Anyone in Discord?
Stars rotating?
Not a viable hypothesis. I haven't opened it up more broad to the panel, just to Discord, to see if we can get some engagement with someone saying, yeah, I've got science for a globe.
Well, what if I said that only God has ever proven it?
What about
making
only
sure that
this?
the sun stood still for 3 days?
I actually have
What-
something to
what-
correct.
what
Is
all
that
of
a very manipulation by the experimenter? Or
What
does the
about only
experimenter
Discord?
necessarily have to be human?
What about only Discord? Do you not understand?
To be fair, they're not exactly
I just
piping up, are
bumped
they?
it.
No, going once. Discord, any science for a globe? Or if you've had something presented to you.
negative.
Go on, George. Go on.
There is none.
Bummer. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container?
Well, not so far.
Druidia? Right.
Rudia's got containment.
Yeah, wrong example. Are there any uncontained planets actually in Spaceballs? Not too
Only
sure.
Spaceballs. I don't know about Spaceballs. Somebody corrected me
Yeah,
on this,
that-
actually. Somebody
The
said
one,
that... Hold
sorry.
on. I was just going to say, somebody corrected me on it and said that Druidia wasn't contained until the Space Bandits, or Spaceballs, were trying to steal their air. Then they put containment around it. In other words, up until the point it was just existing next to the vacuum without any issue.
Till they brought a vacuum and put next to it.
No, they put a vacuum cleaner next to the containment that they'd put around the air that was existing in a vacuum to begin with, without any issue. So they opened up the hatch and tried to suck it all out when they turned the Spaceballs spaceship into Mega Maid. But that was after they'd tried to contain their air so that it wouldn't get stolen. According to somebody who corrected me, it's been about 10, 15 years since I last watched Spaceballs, to be honest.
I don't think so.
Well,
I
wait a
think
minute, though. Hold on.
I think they always had containment. Sorry.
Well, hold on a second though. What isn't in a typical vacuum, and I've heard the Globers argue this, that it's only like a 3% or no 3 psi differential that's causing the vacuum. So think about that for a second.
Sorry, what vacuum?
Yeah.
A vacuum cleaner, there's only like a 3 psi pressure differential. That's what causes the vacuum to suck. So the gag even starts to fall apart because how up are they supposed to be, and what's the pressure differential at that height according to the globes and all this stuff? But I guess you're not getting it.
Well, the
No,
vacuum,
I get it. Sorry.
the vacuum isn't supposed to suck. It's actually lowering the pressure and the air particles are pushing
The
up.
pressure differential causes that, though. It's the pressure differential that causes it's entropy.
But how do you create a vacuum in a vacuum, though?
I mean,
Don't.
if you use a straw, you might, like, we say sucking because when we use a straw, that's the term we use for when we're sucking a straw. But all we're doing is creating a pressure differential.
Correct.
So when bowlers say vacuums don't suck, that's not true. It's sucking is they could say it's not true because there's not a human person sucking with their lips, but it's the same thing. It's the high pressure is going to go to low.
Yeah, imagine on the alien craft when you've got Sigourney Weaver trying to flush out the alien through the airlock. Well, what is the airlock in heliocentric terms? You've got them out in space and the outside pressure is lower than the inside pressure. So when she opens the airlock, what happens? Does the outside start to go, come here, gas, and grab hold of it? No. What happens is the gas, which is expanding in all directions to fill the availability of volume it has to fill, suddenly finds it's got more volume to fill. So it rushes out. So it's not that the vacuum that doesn't exist, we don't have a sky vacuum. It's not that the gas is being pulled away from our atmosphere in their religion of a sphere Earth. It would be that the gas is trying to expand out into whatever space it has to fill. And space, in the heliocentric world, is a space for gas to fill. So gas would fill it. In the same way as the gas, imagine you've got now, instead of the spaceship with gas pressure, you've got Earth with gas pressure. Well, they're both gas pressure. and they're both claimed to be next to a vacuum. It's just one's got a giant titanium structure around the gas to keep it there, and the other hasn't. One being a spaceship in a vacuum, the other being a globe Earth in a vacuum. Well, one would have all the gas immediately dissipate into the availability of volume. That would be a globe Earth in a vacuum, because there's nothing containing the gas. So it would just expand out into the space, and we'd all be dead. It would be 10 to the minus 17 torr at sea level instantly.
It's quite cool when it's a good example, that aliens, Nathan, when you think about the gas molecule behavior, because you've got the airlock sealed, and at the moment, just before you open it, a load of molecules have just hit the airlock and they're on the way back. When you open it, the next lot that would have hit just continue on into space. But the molecules that are going the other way, they still continue going the other way. They're not, as you say, sucked out into gas. They go all the way back to the other wall, and then on the way back, or their other collision, they just continue. But it shows you the speed and the power and how many molecules are happening. That you see that, but actually, that's only a small percentage that are going out. The rest are still going in their other random directions. It's only the ones that have no longer got the impedance of the airlock door that
exactly. And in scale terms, you can compare it. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that the airlock is comparable to, let's say you've got something that's the size of, I don't know, like a kid's toy car. You know, like one of those little kids' electric cars. Let's say the spaceship's that big. Yeah? Well, oh, here you go. There's a better example. Let's say the size of a car's wheel by scale. And the airlock's the size of the valve. Yeah? Well, when you open the valve, it doesn't just suddenly explode. Nor does it suddenly just have every little bit of air in the tyre disappear. You have to sit with your finger on the valve for a while. Well, as Adam's described, it's because all of the air in your tyre is still bouncing off the top of it and the rubber rim on the side and everywhere else. It's only the air that bounces off a bit of tyre rim and then heads towards the valve. And when it gets to the valve, there isn't anything to stop it bouncing and going back in. It just goes straight out. And that's how you lose the pressure. But for a period, all the gas that's bouncing around still bouncing around. It's just the gas that hits the valve has a way out.
There's a knock-on effect of that, Nathan, in the fact that air molecule that would have hit but went straight out would have come back and maybe have had a collision with a molecule that was going to be on its way out. Because it's no longer there, then what you end up doing is increasing the probability of the path rates through there, because you diminish the chance of a molecule being starting off that way and having its path affected by another molecule. So that's why it then increases like that. But
you're talking about effusion, Adam, yeah? That's what you're talking about, is what they call effusion.
I think it's diffusion, actually, not effusion.
Effusion is when effusion happens faster than diffusion. The best example of it, well, although it's not a real thing, was, remember that little hole they supposedly got in the ISS, right? When a supposed piece of debris hit it or something. Well, technically, the air should have rushed out of that through that hole faster than it would if they just opened the whole door, because as Adam was just saying, there isn't the amount of collisions happening. So to a molecule, so it's coming out faster. It's not being slowed down by collisions with other molecules. So the smaller the hole, the faster the rate of gas through it. But obviously, that's effusion, yeah.
Okay, I was going to emphasize that it's...
Sorry, Arwin, I'm just going to read out this super chat. I'm really sorry, you have to bear with me. Shout out to Retro Bill, who says, MC Toon strongly denies the claim that the necessary antecedent for gas pressure is a container. He wants a citation for the claim. I'll give him one, no worries. So, Conspiracy Cats, without the container, there can be no pressure. There's a quote for you, a citation. Take it up with Conspiracy Cats. But what we actually say for MC Toon's benefit is show us gas pressure without a container. I'll accept it in a heartbeat, MC Toon. You just need to show us gas pressure without a container. Beyond your fundamentalist religious belief that the sky is a vacuum. So beyond your religious belief that the sky is a vacuum, show us gas pressure without a container. Because I can show you thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of examples of gas pressure with containment. That's not an issue either. Just go and buy yourself some propane. They won't be giving you in a wheelbarrow. They'll be giving you in a container. But if you can show us gas pressure without a container, beyond your fundamentalist religious belief that the sky is a vacuum, then I will accept your demonstration that a container isn't really required to have something to press on to create pressure. With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who liked, commented, shared, subscribed, smashed the super chat, or joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!